Hi, good afternoon. I'm Don Zavis, National Sales Trainer and Sales Coach. I do keynote speaking throughout the country on revenue development topics, and I'd like you to invite you and appreciate you being here for today's Sales Triage session. This particular one is going to be on role play, and specifically the value of role playing. And there's a great joke, not that I'm much of a comic, by the way, and certainly those in my world that will share that with you. But I love the old joke where this, it's in New York, in Manhattan. And this young man goes up to a man in the streets and says, "How do I get to Carnegie Hall?" And of course, the old man looks at him and says, "Practice, practice, practice." Meaning that if you want to be a performer at Carnegie Hall, you'll have to practice and become very proficient in your instrument. In sales, it's no different. Whereas his instrument may be a violin, something like that, our instrument is ourselves, certainly our voice, our personality, all the items that make us what we are. And the value of role-playing is kind of an often overlooked, but I really do enjoy it. It's a section of my practice that we continue to develop on. Because it really builds on the concept of muscle memory. And for those that are in any kind of sports, for example, or martial arts, musician, that muscle memory is essentially the unconscious way that you do things. It's the unconscious ability that you have. And you actually learn in one of four ways. Let me share with you what they are. You have what's called unconscious incompetence. Unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know. The second step is what we call conscious incompetence. You now know what you don't know. So for example, I'm a terrible golfer. But when I first started, I grabbed the club, started swinging away. But as I started doing it more and more and more and more, I started to realize there were elements in my swing that really weren't that good. And there were people out there on the course or the pros that were available at the country club that would be able to go out with me and say, "Okay, Don, put your head down, do this, straighten your arm." And they gave me all of these things. I was consciously incompetent. I now knew what I didn't know. So you go from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, right? So you understand what you don't have, or unconscious incompetence. You understand what you don't know. The third step that you go for is what's called conscious competence. So the third step means when I think about it, I'll do it right. So let me go back to my golf analogy. When I put my head down and held my arm a certain way and held the club right, whenever I thought about it, immediately I got a much, much better swing, and ultimately the ball went where I wanted it to go. So when you go from that unconscious incompetence, then you go to the conscious incompetence, you know what you don't know. Then you go from the conscious to the third, which is the conscious competent, which means when I think about it, when I focus on it, I do it right. And fourth, and ultimately where we all want to go to, is what we call unconscious competence. We don't even have to think about it. Our body automatically goes through it. It's that muscle memory, right? It's Tiger Woods when he goes to stand up. He doesn't even have to think about it, and the ball just flies a mile and it's straight as an arrow. Your role play will give you that. Working with your coworkers, family members, friends, neighbors, associates, networking relationships that you have. Talk about all the different scenarios that you could have. That allows you to build the necessary muscle memory so when you get in front of a prospect or in front of a client, you already feel comfortable answering and asking questions. You already feel comfortable developing the features and benefits of your organization. You already feel comfortable saying kind of some of the things that you might feel uncomfortable about. So that conscious competence moves into that unconscious competence. You don't even have to think about it. You know it already. Role-playing will give you that. And I love to use random scenarios. What I encourage all of us to do is take a very simple sheet of paper. All right? And on this sheet of paper, I want you to write 12 or 13 different types of industries. And then just tear them off. It's kind of a fun game. So a sheet of paper, write 12 or 13 different kind of industries, tear them up into little bitty sheets. Then get another piece of paper. And I want you to write down items that you might face in your normal selling world. So for example, competition on one piece of little slip of paper. Maybe wants lowest price on another one. Maybe needs delivery time quicker than you have available. And you take this sheet and these sheets, put them into two separate piles, and then select one at random from each one. So you might get something that says you sell aluminum siding, and you're selling it to someone where there's a lot of competition. And you select someone who's in your organization or somebody you have in your world to act as that prospect, to act as that aluminum siding prospect that is looking for the best price. I will tell you, having done this thousands of times, the legitimacy of muscle memory is absolutely true. So if you want to get to Carnegie Hall, how do you get there? You practice, practice, practice. Thank you very much for joining us for this sales triage session. I'm Don Zavis, and I wish you good selling.